Okay, I think we are going to start on time, surprisingly. Akansha, what do you say? Okay, we are also being recorded. So, hi everyone. I can see our BFA students and many other guests. Some of you are also on YouTube. Akansha, you will excuse me. I made some formal introduction before we start. So we will spend a few minutes on this, if you don't mind. So allow me to begin. Thank you everyone for joining us today for this online walkthrough and discussion with Akansha Rastogi, a senior curator at the Kiran Nadar Museum of Art, better known as KNMA. Akansha, we are very happy and grateful that you accepted our invitation. This is the first event that is organized with and for the students of our newly launched BFA program at Jindal School of Liberal Arts and Humanities. Hence, allow me to begin by saying a few words about the BFA program and then stress the importance of holding these kinds of interactions between future art practitioners and contemporary artists, art institutions, and today especially our curator. For a while now, many of us in the Indian art field felt the need to transform higher education in India and shape it according to the framework and challenges of contemporary art practice. For those of us who did their BFA and MFA in India, the sense was that our art departments are doing a great job when it comes to providing us with practical skills, but less with initiating us into the contemporary discourses of art. It seems as if the first years in the career of young artists, preferably spent in the urban centers of the subcontinent, are integral parts in the completions of one's art education. It is then and there, after completing the BFA and the MFA, that young practitioners interact with the discourse or discourses and practices of contemporary art and begin to develop their own visual language. The integration of art education with liberal art education seemed to me to be the key in transforming art pedagogy and in training young practitioners for the challenges of contemporary art. The fusion of practice and theory, as well as an interdisciplinary approach to the study of the visual arts, are also crucial for the process of cultivating fertile environment for visual thinkers. All of it, however, will not suffice without encouraging art students to participate in the current discussions and debates of contemporary art. In the last decades, in fact, since the last century, we seem to move away from the perception of art as an objective field of knowledge or practice and see it more as culturally constructed field of activity. Which is to say, we no longer look for the purity of the canvas or for the essence of art as such. Instead, we seem to accept the idea that art is a visual discussion, at times even a debate. Accordingly, and that's the important bit, I guess, to study art can no longer be seen as a process of understanding its essence or to master its techniques, but rather to participate in a conversation like the ones that we are going to have today. So thank you very much, Akansha, for helping us to do it, to do the first one. Akansha will tell you more about KNMA and its history, a private museum that nonetheless plays a decisive role in the public domain. But let me share a few words about Akansha. Akansha Rastogi is a senior curator of exhibition and programming at KNMA. She has served as the Associate Curator of the India Pavilion at the 58th Venice Biennale 2019 and participated in many curatorial residencies and visitorship programs. Her research focuses on the history of modern and contemporary Indian art exhibition. She has previously worked as a researcher and curator with large private collections, including Delhi Art Gallery, Modern, and Oceanama. Rastogi has been an active member of several artists-led initiatives, forums, and collectives in Delhi, including her collective WALA, W-A-L-A, with Sunit Malik and Paribartan Mohanty. Her recent curatorial projects at KNMA include Right to Laziness, 2020, Smell Assembly, 2019, What Place is Kitchen, What Place Community, 2018, Hunger for Passerby, 2017. After this exhibition, she gave a wonderful lecture in the university when we were on campus, and many other conversation series. I'm not going to name all of them. Those who are familiar with the contemporary arts in India know that Akansha is a central figure, and we are very, very excited to have her with us. Akansha, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Akya. That was a very generous introduction, and thank you for introducing us to this newly inaugurated program, BFA program. I'm very excited to interact with all the students and very much looking forward to the discussion from here on, which I have titled as Museum and Storytelling, the idea of storytelling and the museum space, and how a museum space facilitates that. Probably everyone might have some observations or something to say, so feel free to please come in towards the end of the session. I would be very eager to hear from all of you. So maybe I'll just jump right in there with a short note that I'll read out first. In that inaugural year of the Curator Museum of Art in our Saket space in 2011, me and my colleagues, every day we were observing the museum space, its floors, walls, false walls, ceiling, different ceiling heights, echoes, dust, temperature, time, distance from one gallery to another, the permanent collection, the small permanent collection. And we're imagining the rhythms of each of these elements. Every day we would walk around, stand in different corners, in proximity to different works of art. Most times it was just us, the staff, the security personals, artists, and the artworks, glaring at each other, getting accustomed, setting up the habits and rituals of the place. And then slowly, the museum staff and the trickling stream of visitors, artists and workshop participants, patrons, and the guests, all alertly gleaning and sensing the potential of this expansive proposition that this contemporary art museum already was or was projecting to be. Each stakeholder contributing and evolving and widening the frame, role, and network to explore this proposition of museum making and thinking and its futurity. This was 10 years ago, and it's very interesting. A said collection marked a certain physical space as its territory or boundary and decided to designate itself as an art museum and become a public space and take on the responsibility of configuring and exploring its publics on the way. And as if trying to slip into a hold as well as create a holder, a container, or a nomenclature. The ease of this slippage, the kind of ease with which the slippage happened and the beauty of it still amuses me and sparks my curiosity. The self-inviting act of instituting a private museum and entering into this process of becoming, of curatorially and programmatically, step-by-step learning and understanding the descriptive power of space space of the museum to describe the body, bodies, works, objects, ideas both inside it and outside of it. And that's what interests me, and this is one kind of a story. And rather beginning of my story, or my first encounter with this museum space that I have been involved and engaged with over the last 10, 11 years. And this is also to say that we all tell stories, and we tell stories to share our experiences, our histories. And we all know that our museums also tell stories and also store stories. They're stored. And likewise, the works of art as well tell stories, and our stories themselves. So, but questions that we also rightly so often ask as who's telling the story, and whose story it is, and in what ways, what materials, sources, and resources it is being told. And of course, storytelling has different purposes. To pass time, to bring people together, and also sometimes to divide people as well, and to pass down experience of one generation to another. And it's the orality of storytelling tradition that binds a group. But definitely through stories, we enter into new relations with each other and with another. And what interests me in this session today is this idea of the descriptive power of the museum space, the charged narratives, the charged narrative forms it can push forth, and how a museum space and exhibitionary experiences create a co-presence of so many different times, different people, ideas, and narratives. How this layered world of stories, travels, journeys, references, plays, and dreams unfold and also mingle with each other. They collide, how in a museum space becomes a space of play and room for ideas to be developed and collide. So I'm very consciously moving away from, from a very set idea of the museum into a space where it's a space of play and becoming, and how exhibition as a form conjure and expand our imagination. So there's a place of historical analysis, gathering, accumulation, reflection on our current world and time, and yet also a speculative place with a futuristic will and a germinative power. Why certain ideas and thoughts that may perish otherwise find a refuge inside a museum space, and such ideas and thoughts and objects or images quietly lay there inside a museum, waiting to be found, noticed, dug out, for someone to bring them into a set of new relations, to activate them. Just again, like a story, like Walter Benjamin in his very famous essay, The Storyteller, on this Russian novelist, he writes, a story does not expend itself. It preserves and concentrates its strength and is capable of releasing it even after a very long time. And I find this really beautiful. A story does not expend itself. Kharcha nahi karti hai. It does not spend itself. It does not expend itself. It can be, it can be germinated again after a very long time. It doesn't lose its power. And this powerful release of the energy and of this world making and meanings is what I'm interested in the museum space. And through that, we can actually see what kind of a growth happens in a collection, or what growing might imply, and how an artist's active presence releases and reinterprets and recontextualizes the museum space and everything else that is held within it. And of course, readings, misreadings, misunderstandings, and no understanding, and all sets of emotions are part of it also, and are elements in this journey. So allow me to briefly take you through this journey. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So allow me to briefly take you through this very special exhibition that we had organized almost a year and a half ago, physically before the pandemic. And now we've created a 360-degree virtual tour of this exhibition, which is accessible from the museum website and from where I'm also kind of screen sharing. So, I mean, today I'm going to take you through certain parts of this exhibition, but you're free to explore it at your own speed and time, at your own pace. Please feel free to do so after the session, and promise it's a lot of fun and it's quite extensive. So, so we had organized this exhibition to celebrate 10 years of KNMA and to look back on all that we have done. It will take a little while to upload, a couple of seconds. So this exhibition we organized to look at our aspirations, our approaches, our propositions we've made, the stories and histories and voices and perspectives we have amplified, presented, in the last 10 years. And through our exhibition making practice and through our programming with different education programs, we have mobilized many unseen archives, collections and documents and historical works and large oeuvres, body of work of under-researched artists, and presented such material for the first time in the public domain. So for us, exhibition making has been a very generative site for assimilation and reading and processing of so much of cultural material of the recent past. So now the question for us was, how do we present this brief history? And these numerous conversations that we have had with so many artists and our inquiries and engagements and preoccupations, questions that we have as institution in the making, how do we tell all of this, how do we tell our story in a meaningful and yet novel ways that allow the visitors to the exhibition to engage and open up these different registers. And with this, so much exhibition archive material, and through that, and in this process, we did this entire very giant exercise of collating all our past documents, putting together these 70 video documentation of these 70 large exhibitions that we have done, and of course led by the director of the museum, and the entire museum team came together and kind of put together this material, started processing this. And then, then we started thinking about like how now to go on from here, what kind of methodology such an exhibition and shape such an exhibition could take. So when you enter this 10 years of KNMA exhibition, you actually are welcomed by this installation by artist Naveen Thomas, which is called The Weather Report in 3 parts, a phantom orchestra, which is large sound installation of this wind instruments that Naveen Thomas collected, discarded wind instruments collected from a local Madras band. And you hear a strange soundscape of sounds of catastrophes from all across the world, kind of worked upon and abstracted by Naveen Thomas. And he's interested in creating these sonic fields and sound fields with these discarded electronic materials. I mean, that's an amazing amazing practice that he has. But for us, this sort of a band, an assemblage of instruments without the human presence, an orchestra tuning itself without any human presence was kind of airy and restless, and also in search of a rhythm. And with this abstraction, it felt like it has a consciousness of its own. And for us, it kind of gave us a ground to start a metaphoric space to build the exhibition on from, a great note to start it, as if even as an orchestra ourselves, we have been, playing for ourselves for a while, even though with the audience, for the audience, but it is also for ourselves. So, so we go on from here into this exhibition. This is the corridor. And right upon the entry, you come across this facade. This facade has touchscreen projections of works from the museum collection. So you can actually touch any of the works and they'll pop up, and you can play around. These works are not arranged in any particular order. They're all works from the collection. And while this exhibition is a work, is also a collection of works, of select works on display. And for us, it was very exciting to have this sort of a interactive play of works that are also in storage. So there is this constant reminder, in a way, that what you're seeing is only a part, and what is also in the storage is also brought in relation with what is on display. And so there is this sort of a fragmentary knowing which is at play, and you're conscious of when you walk around the exhibition, and that seems to be quite exciting. So further on, we divided this exhibition into several sections, and actually you can see some of the sections here. And like one of the sections was called Artists, Pedagogues, and Visual Poets. I'll just move into this. Is it visible? Loading on your screens as well?
Yes.
So yeah, so this very poetic section, in a way, that brings together works of these master artists, in a way, Nandlal Bose, Krishna Reddy, K.G. Subramaniam, Anupam Sood, Somnath Hoare, among others, who's all of them artist pedagogues who have spent their lives dedicated to art pedagogy. And in our past exhibitions, we have engaged with their works in depth, in quite extensively. Either we have organized huge retrospectives of their work, or presented their large body of work together, or organized in some or the other program, in very intense way. So for us, making this sort of a clustering of them together as artists, pedagogues, and also kind of presenting, they all represent different artistic lineages, and very interestingly, the historical lineages in modern Indian contemporary art are still routed and rooted through the schools of art, various schools of art that have dominated Indian pedagogy for a very long time. So, but it still, I mean, this kind of encountering of them together gave us different insights. Like, for instance, now here you see Krishna Reddy, Krishna Reddy's viscosity prints. Alongside his metal plates and etchings. Now, I think it's for the first time that his metal plates, his etching plates, as well as his prints were put together side by side, and to see his method and his technique. I mean, he's a master printmaker and someone who discovered viscosity printmaking technique, and as part of the William Hayter's Atelier and Atelier 17. I mean, that's all part of history, but his contribution is immense. But for us to kind of present this, the plate and the etching together is quite wonderful. Now here you actually see it as a sculpture itself, as a body itself, the etched out plate and the print. So what's very interesting is here you get a new light to see Krishna Reddy as a sculptor as well. When you look at his other sculptural works that he did in early 60s and mid 60s, you get a very different sense. You begin to understand his work a bit differently. And then also his connection with Shantiniketan, being in proximity to. You'll have to give me some time. It takes a little time to load. You can see Binod Bihari Mukherjee and Nandlal Bose's works, and the work we've chosen to present in this configuration are his collages and Nandlal Bose's postcards, all done in the late periods of their life. Like particularly when Binod Bihari Mukherjee had lost his eyesight, almost completely lost his eyesight, and wrote his famous book Chitrakar also, which I'm sure you all must be familiar with. If not, you must read his Chitrakar. It's a fascinating read, again and again, a book of stories in a way. So you see these collages and you see these postcards, and on this other side are K.G. Subramaniam's very early works that one would hardly associate with him now. But when you see them, his connection with Shantiniketan and his interest in textiles, and these are all actually on works not on paper but on silk, on cloth, and these are all early 50s works made during his time at the Handloom Board. Handloom Board was he was a designer at the Handloom Board, and these are all early institutions forming after India's independence. And it's amazing how visual artists have contributed to these different institutions, which now make the backbone of different disciplines. What happened?
You can't see it now. Now we can see.
Okay. So yeah, just to take you through some of them, you can see the block prints. You can see, his interest. He's stamping the sari. He's creating. Can you see these blocks? So these are really fascinating works. Yeah, so K.G. Subramaniam, apart from his own legacy as a pedagogue, and then his contribution to Baroda Art School, and then Somnath, who contributed immensely to the printmaking department at the Delhi Polytechnic. Delhi College of Art, Delhi, which was earlier called Delhi Polytechnic. So this section, in a way, brings together these very niche experimental works of these artists from their very large groups when they were early on in their career, or experimenting very late in their career. So they kind of remind us of the intensity and power of the image. They take us back to that, and at KNMA we've been astounded by these inheritances and these roots and discoveries, and these encounters that we have had through our research and this exercise of collection building. So let's perhaps we can move on to another section, which is called the Black Wall. And let me tell you, the black wall is not black. So this entire wall is the black wall. So as you can see, it is a wall of monochromatic works. It brings together, but the reason why we've named it the Black Wall is also to remind us of the walls of the museum. Walls are often become invisible. They're kind of placeholders, usually for works of art and for of different sizes and mediums. So, but permanent. They become accessories in one way or the another, appearing and reappearing in different configurations. But for us, they've been witnesses, kind of unassuming participants and bystanders in this process of exhibition making. And that have hosted, held, also deflected, deferred, and also in contributed in translating the sort of an emergence of artworks and different artistic propositions posed by different artists. So this black wall actually accumulates, acts as an aggregator of select works of artists whose large retrospectives we have organized at the museum. So there's the 7 large retrospectives that we have organized of artists like Nasreen Mohammadi, Jairam Patel, Himmat Shah, Rameshwar Druta, Nalini Malani, Vivan Sundaram, Arpita Singh, and you see all their works, and actually only monochromatic works. So it's very, very intense and exciting to see what's happening here. On one hand, you have Nalini Malani's photographs juxtaposed, camera-less photographs, juxtaposed with Nasreen Mohammadi. Both of them were great friends and were exploring photography as part of Vision Exchange workshop in 1970s, experimental work, a workshop organized by artist Akbar Padamsi as part of Nehru Fellowship grant that he got. And it's amazing to see Nalini Malani's photography and Nasreen's work alongside, and Nasreen's photographs alongside Vivan Sundaram's. One second, let me just go there. It is a little hard trying to zoom in, and yeah, so here you see Nasreen Mohammadi's photographs on the left and Jairam Patel's work, and these are Arpita Singh's abstract works juxtaposed with Vivan Sundaram's engine oil works. So it's an amazing mix of oeuvre and styles, and but what's interesting is, they're all happening simultaneously. They're all peers and all mostly 70s and 80s, and works that we are not that they are not are not known by, like through these retrospectives that we organized. Most of these works were dug out from different collections and brought to public domain after like good 30-40 years. So Arpita Singh is more known for her figurative works, but here what you see is a completely different body of work, and to see them together as mark-making exercises with Vivan's engine oil works is, I mean, to my mind, is absolutely stunning. Now, on the other side is a section on sculptures, which kind of focuses on this, highlights this idea of artisanal labor, weaves and patterns. I mean, that's kind of becomes a focus area in this, and the role of ambiguity in the creative process. So on one end, you see Mrinalini Mukherjee's hemp work, iconic hemp work that she was very well known for, using jute to create these anthropomorphic forms. You can have a closer look here. This work is called Kamal. Something like that. Now juxtaposed with Praneet Soi, contemporary artist's work Srinagar. So which is a kind of a installation made of tiles, paper mache tiles, with with stone inlay work, and I mean with motifs, architectural motifs taken from different Sufi saints' shrines in Srinagar. And it's very interesting how he has brought together this body of work. Actually, 1 second. Close this and take it to just turn around. So these are all details of architectural facades and patterns and motifs from different buildings and shrines in Srinagar, and he's been visiting Srinagar, and he's been visiting Kashmir since 2010, has done a huge body of work. And for this, he collaborated with different artisans in a local workshop of a friend he came to make during his travels. And likewise, Sudarshan Shetty's carpet, which is again a work made in collaboration with different artisans. It's an untitled work. It's a carpet made of wood, very beautifully crafted, and the metaphor of something hidden underneath or trying to emerge, or something underneath a beautiful Kashmiri carpet. The metaphor is right there, and it's quite stunning. And what I want to bring forth perhaps now is in this sort of a seen, unseen, partly seen scape. There is also embedded different videos. You must have noticed there are lots and lots of videos in this exhibition, and so it's quite an interactive exhibition. Here you have Himmat Shah's silver painting. I mean, there are only 4 surviving pieces, and which we showed as part of our retrospective. And here is a closer look at that. So it was something which he did in the 60s again, and was completely lost until the retrospective happened. And thanks to Rubina Karode, director of the museum, and also the curator of the exhibition, who kind of literally dug this body of work out, and to present this. So in this correlation are also these videos, and embedded within this is this work by an artist, Manmeet Devgan. 1 second, I'm just going to start sharing the screen. Is my screen stuck? Can you all see the video?
Yeah.
So in between there is this there's this footage, documented footage of this artist Manmeet Devgan, whose performance in search for intimacy and an intimate personal space inside the museum, and for her to create that particular intimate space, she breaks through tries to break through at least the history or the heaviness of the history and of these masters' works all around us through this performance, which was done in 2012 actually as part of this Inhabiting the Museum performance series that I was curating at that time at the museum. And the idea of the series was pretty simple, to propose to treat the museum as a landscape, and invited performers to respond to that landscape. So, to generate witness accounts and narratives and different ways of seeing that landscape. And I believe that, for something to come into view, for a fuller kind of a view, to be able to see a fuller view, you have to perform certain distancing acts. And so this sort of an invitation to perform inside the museum was a way of creating that distance, and for artists to propose certain lenses to mediate that distance. So Manmeet's, Devgan's act was quite like that story of mapping that I was talking about in the beginning of our session. So in this performance, what passes through is there. She spends a full working day, 9:30 a.m. when the museum opens to 6:30 p.m. Like in that full working day at this very, very newly inaugurated contemporary art museum space. She inlines the entire floor of 32,000 square feet of floor with her thought maps using plastic straws and a marker pen. So she labors, responds to this landscape, and continues to write, draw, sketch on that thin line of the plastic straw until completely exhausted. But to my mind, what she does is, she creates this really rare, intimate space for her own feelings, emotions, amidst the stories of other artists and landscape, which is already of the museum, which is already populated with these iconic works of art. And I feel intimacy is a very, very interesting thing. It attaches itself to things. It attaches to walls, to postures, to writings, and it's kind of also is transferred through notes, scribbles, cues that she begins to kind of leave in the space, asking us to develop relationships with and around it. Of course, she's offering a part of herself to everyone. And with that active presence, she makes the museum a radically fragile space, a vulnerable space and a fragile space, at least for that duration. And believe me, these straws were broken 100 times as anybody passed by. But she persistently kept connecting one straw with another, with her exhausted body, bent body, and of course, you can imagine the visitor's body half bent, cutting through this. This, what do you call, 143 centimeter standard byline, like line that cuts, that's a 5 feet high middle line that cuts across all the works. That's where you do the hang of the work. That's where the center of any work on the museum wall lies most times. So you can imagine the visitor body cutting through that on the floor, looking halfway at the floor, trying to read the sentences and also seeing these works on the wall. So, and while she does this her own time as an artist, the duration experienced by her as an artist, the passing visitor's time, the time marked by various artworks in the museum that she's surrounded by, responding to, seeing consciously and unconsciously, engaging with, and the museum's own sense of time. All of this creates a layered and perforated presence. These different experiences of time coexist, sometimes in friction, sometimes in sync, overlapping, and producing a new landscape. And that's how I think, the subjectivity of the artist is inserted. And this through this living body of the artist, this living body of the artist stands in parallel with this emerging body of the museum. We don't know what this emerging body of the museum would be like. We still don't know, but it stands in parallel, and I find it quite interesting. And so in this process of putting this work together, this exhibition together, we ended up digitizing a lot of our past programs. We're still in the process, but we did quite a lot and used it in our space. Maybe we can stop here. That's very yummy. And maybe I would like to move to another program or workshop, which was organized again in 2011, actually, in that very inaugural year of Saket Museum, and conducted by artist Sonia Khurana, based on her proposition of her work lying down on the ground rules, which was a participatory work. And her exercise was pretty simple. It was a day-long session. I'll just read out from her extract, ground rules. Go inside the museum. Please observe the silence. Don't carry anything with you. For the moment, don't speak with friends. Don't confer. Try to go quiet. Try to internalize. Be calm. Try not to isolate yourself. Find a spot that you like in the museum. Lie down there for a while. Stay for 5 minutes. It could be longer too. We would come gently and let you know when to return. So with these different exercises, participants chose, created, looked for corners, crevices, spaces where they could lie down, observing the space, staying with themselves, moving their body in slowly, drawing, and all of this concluded to drawing the contours of their body, of one's own body and of another's body. And with all of this, another idea of occupying the space emerges, and suddenly there's an expansion that happens in the sense of receptivity, receptivity of all individuals and receptivity of the space as well, stretching the receptivity, the range of things that a museum can catch and capture, and making an internal time available. And this sort of an internal time is only a gift that an artist can give to the museum. And through these exercises, we were able to engage with that gift for a while. And now looking back, it's very interesting. And through this 10-year exhibition, we were able to repopulate the museum with these instances of our past events, which again, in very interesting ways, activate the museum. So I'm going to end on this note, but before I end, I just want to quickly share one more video. Yeah, so before we move into the discussion session, I wanted to show this another video, which is end on the story as narrated by another artist about her own collection of photographs made for the museum as part of an exhibition. And this small excerpt is also part of this 10 years exhibition. In a way, in this video, Dalit is talking about arrangement of her set of 52 photographs, which she calls the silver set. And the silver set is a gift that she made for KNMA, especially. And with that emphasis on specially, what I'm trying to imply is the shift that happened in her practice with that work. She began to look at her entire archive of photographs that she's been engaged with over good 2 or 3 decades of photography practice, looking through different series of photographs that she has done, creating a new meaning out of it. And now, in this photography installation, what she does is she leaves certain spaces blank, and she puts a box inside that installation, and at any point in time, she changes the order completely and puts certain works and certain photographs in storage inside that box. No one, not even curators of the museum, but except her, no one except her could touch or move that set. So she would walk in at any point in time and just change the order. And we would, of course, be completely perplexed. What happened? What moved? We've just documented the work and it has changed. And it kept happening again and again over months. And at some point in this process of that 9-month exhibition, she invited all of us, the museum staff, to give a tour of her process. And here is what she says. Can you hear? Is it audible? Okay, just give me a
Not yet.
second. Not yet. 1 second. I think I need to share sound.
Suddenly there's a connection happening between these 3 images. Something is tying them together. And for this work, you have to be very still, very quiet, and still inside. So it's almost like taking a deep breath and stilling yourself, exhaling all the nonsense of one's day-to-day life, and holding a certain note. I don't know if I can explain that editing process more than that, but it's like there's a certain note. And then all the images have to work with that note. Do you follow? And so even if there's one off image that might have purpose to serve, I might want that one image that doesn't quite fit in, but I want it there. But it has to be a very conscious decision. So I came down to these 52, and because Kiran had stressed on the silver part, that was good because it gave some restriction. And I sort of enjoyed that. So it was like a game that I was playing with Kiran not even knowing about it, you know. She didn't know why this set of 52 and how it came up. And gradually over time, when she looks at these images, I think she'll start to see some of the thoughts, some of the secrets that I have planted in this work. But it's not for me to say. Some of it I can't even articulate. But Kiran knows the layers to what I'm talking about. So she's my addressee. This is an edit that I made for her, for this space. And through that came this realization that my works all connect. I could bring Blue Book and put it here and it would work.
Yeah, but that, she says her works all connect with one another. And it's a very interesting moment in her practice as a photographer, where she comes to imagine these photo architecture. So with that one box that was inside, where you could see some, Mrs. Nada was also sitting on that box. Actually, there was a bench attached to that box, see, where you could see, reflect on what's on the wall and what's could be inside that box hidden, planting these secrets. From that, she expanded it into many, many photo architectures that she began to design as places and spaces for her photographs, for her museum bhavan, and came to conceptualize this entire idea of museum bhavan, where she imagined museum of chance, museum of closets, museum of machines, museum of little ladies, and these different permutations and combinations. And then this was in 2012, and then 3 years later in 2015 came back again to the museum, came back to KNMA with her own museum bhavan as the director, founder, curator, and archivist of her own museum bhavan. And her museum bhavan is now traveling all across the world to different parts. And I mean, I would like to end on this note of the Artist Museum, and where another sort of conversations and stories are shaping up and transforming and changing and propelled. So this kind of force is very interesting, and yeah, would be happy to enter into a discussion from here on. Akia.
Akansha, thank you so much for this walkthrough. I will use the term, I think now we can use the term walkthrough rightly, because even if we did it online, you managed to bring the museum to life, and in a period in which we are all craving and not always able to go visit spaces, see physical works of art. Through your discourse, you managed to make it real, to create intimacy with what we saw. So thank you so much for this. We are entering now into the Q&A session. We can do it in two ways, or means this is open. You can either write your questions, comments in the chat box, or better still, raise your hand virtually, and we will request you to speak and to address your question to Akansha. I think the easiest way, in order to keep the flow of a dialogue, we will question and answer, we will not collect questions. So if anyone would like to start, I know that I have many questions, but I will wait with them. So if anyone would like to start, please. Our BFA student, it will be very, very nice to hear some of you.
Now we have Avril raise her hand.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I think thank you a lot for having this virtual walkthrough with us. I feel this really shows the progress of technology, wherein, sitting at our homes, we can really take a walk through another place. That's very interesting. My question to you is, you mentioned throughout the walkthrough that there are many artworks that are placed together, either on a wall or together, that you said were in juxtaposition to each other. And so what would you say is the motive behind placing starkly different artworks together rather than having them aligned in a similar theme or something that was used with similar materials? What is the motive behind having artworks that are juxtaposed to each other in a similar wall or in the same area at one time?
Yeah, thank you, everyone, for that question. Before I address that, I would definitely like to say that I took you guys through one or couple of sections of the exhibition, and it's pretty huge. And so feel free to walk it around, with your fingers, cursors on your own, also, and explore it. And it is pretty detailed. The curatorial team of the museum has worked very hard to put this together virtually for everyone to enjoy. Now, you see, the word juxtaposition itself in curatorial thinking, is very interesting and provocative also at the same time. So it just doesn't mean putting one thing, one work or one idea or one image next to one other. It's also about the space around it and with it, and the juxtaposition or the story making or the meaning making exercise also includes not just the storyteller or not just the wall holding it, but also the beholder or the eye perceiving it, so it's the entire scape is very important, and in that conversation, it's a conversation. So I'll give you 2 examples, and let's go back to what I said. So in the beginning, I showed that facade with the projections, touch screen projection, one nice technology that we were all very excited about, and my colleague proposed it. And very exciting, like, you can actually, it's a projection, but it's a wall, and you can touch the wall and the works will pop up. And that sort of a collection was quite random. I mean, it's a random, not random collection of works from the museum collection, not put in any particular division like sculpture category. Sculpture period wise, or art school wise, or different of modalities that we can actually divide them into. And for us, that was very liberating for once, because we've been so used to of curating ideas in a certain way, that to not put any hierarchy and just present this spectrum, this range. And for ourselves, look at that bombardment or that flash of works was I mean, internally for us an amazing exercise. And so there I would say that's a random juxtaposition. But in the spaces, like for instance on the black wall, we have put together that huge canvas and then these abstract works together. So of course there is a visual logic working through that selection of patterns and ideas, and but what brings them together actually is the fact that they actually are certain realizations. For instance, like this is, here we are assessing the work of our. Here we are doing many things. It also goes into a meta-narrative of sorts, stories that only we are aware of, but for the viewer, it becomes another level of story. So so from our standpoint, what's very interesting is you've curated, you've organized retrospectives of 7 very important artists in the Indian art scene, and presented their large bodies of work. And from that, and through that, you've expanded the collection also. So it's not that we had Nasreen Mohammadi's works from the beginning, so through that exhibition making process, the collection also expanded. And now in that research process of making exhibition after exhibition, one after the another, you realize after Nasreen's exhibition happened in 2013, in 15 or 16, we organized this large exhibition called Stretched Terrains, curated by Rubina Karode, which included one small exhibition called Vision Exchange Document, Experiments in New Media from the Vision Exchange Workshop. So now, which illuminated that this very wonderful workshop that Nalini Malani was part of. And we had organized a retrospective already in 2014. So here you're bringing Nalini and Nasreen together, who we discovered that with us also the world is discovering, it's research unfolding in space on different levels. So here you discovered that these guys were together, and that's how they learned photography. There was no one teaching them. They were experimenting in this all, and the story is quite well known actually. And written about now, that in that zone of modern art dominated by most male artists, the progressive artist group, these 2 young women were doing experiments in photography and finding their own niche. And now for us to put these works together kind of brings that history forward. And for us, and then with Arpita Singh's exercise, Arpita Singh's abstract works, which one is not, which people are not familiar with at all, and brings out a part of her own story where she was also working as textile designer. A lot of these artists were working as textile designers and pattern makers with different with Weaver Center, with different organizations at some point in 70s, and they've contributed immensely to the visuality of our culture at that point in time. And so these juxtapositions, I mean, to make the long story short, yeah, one needs to engage and ask, and ask. I don't know if I've answered exactly.
Definitely, ma'am. Yes.
Akansha, I got a question on WhatsApp from another student, and I'm very happy about this question because it's more personal. So the question is about your own experience as a curator in general, and as a curator in KNMA, the limitations and the possibilities of working in this kind of institute, and what does it mean for you as a visual art practitioner, as someone who sees herself as not simply as somebody who mediates, but also somebody who creates, if I may put it like this.
Yeah, thank you for that wonderful, wonderful question. In these 11 years of practice at the museum, I have to say that the museum form or the museum itself has become a medium of sorts also, through which you're exploring the vocabulary, you're pushing, you're figuring out what institution making and building could mean. I've been very fortunate to be here in the early years, in the formative years, and my own formative years also of of my own curatorial practice. So most of my work has definitely been governed by that concern. And so inhabiting the museum, hangar for the passerby, so the kind of exhibitionary forms that I have imagined are all addresses, are all long speeches and acts and addresses to the museum and to the artist body at large. And so they're all conceptual, large conceptual works in scale, actually. And in my own practice outside of the museum, I mean, now there's a huge mix that has happened. Of course, it's difficult to segregate it very starkly. But in my own practice, also as a maker and as a thinker, these concerns remain. I mean, for instance, there was this exhibition that I curated called Archiving the Studio at Koj, in 10, 11 years ago, where it's simple, was to document an artist's studio to the extent of extreme exhaustion. I went to the artist Ranveer Kaleka's studio, kind of occupied his studio, I mean, day and night, touched, removed, measured, photographed from his brush to the stool he sits on, to everything minute to detail, to an absolute obsession, and then turning that into an exhibition of a sort which did not contain his own works, but documents that illuminated his practice in a very different way. But it was an exhibition about and of Ranveer Kaleka, but without his works. But about his practice. So my engagement is at that sort of a level of a creator, maker, contributor, collaborator, and I enjoy that space a lot because it challenges, it throws me off guard every single day. So I'm never at peace, and I can still say whatever I propose is never at or I mean, I'm always uncomfortable, or people around me are always uncomfortable. At least I do. So it's always a little shaky.
Thank you very much, Akansha. We have another question in a similar direction from another student of the BFA, Sabah. What works according to you are challenging to curate?
Different works offer different challenges, and at the museum, we it's a beautiful thing that we you work in teams. So the idea of the work changes when when once it is out from the artist studio, and has entered into an exhibition space or is on the move to an exhibition space, because the way a work of art gets discussed or gets opened up in a space of seeing and showing is very different from when one sees it in a studio space or a personal space of the artist. So because different parties get involved, so different stakeholders get involved, and different aspects get discussed of the install. And those aspects are all very important. They're all elements of the work. So they're all makings of that environment. I'm going back to the question that Avril had asked also. So it's not just simple juxtaposition, but it's also the environment that you're creating. So so to answer you, which works are the most difficult to curate? For me, what I find challenging are these are mostly community-led works, which defy the space, which defy any kind of, which are not object-centric, which are idea-centric or conversation-based, or because what's challenging in them is the moment you're trying to put them in a space. You're marking you begin to represent them, and the challenge is really to how not to explain, like what Benjamin says about story. A story does not expand itself. Like a story does not explain what it is. It does not give explanations. So to not offer those defenses and explanations and elaborations, but to be that story, but to be that work, without any apologies or without any kind of excess is the challenge. Actually, to be able to achieve that is the challenge. I won't say I've achieved it, but I enjoy that struggle.
Akansha, in a similar direction, another question from one of our students, Anya, and she's asking, as a curator, you listen to a million different stories from a million different artists. How do you decide which stories are worth retelling? Nicely put, huh? Through your collection, through your exhibitions. I think this is the question of question for each and every artist in relation to a curator.
Yeah, and it's a very valid question, whose stories one tells and whose stories one doesn't tell, or what's worth telling. Or I would say, of course, there's a degree of without a doubt, there is a degree of privilege, and there is a degree of sensitivity also in this matter. It's not about choice or choosing. I mean, the way I tend to look at it, or the way I deflect or refract this question into other questions, because I've always been uncomfortable throughout my entire career with the idea of selection, and non-selection, and I have, and as an archivist by training, and because I've spent most of my time, an early part of my career, documenting and archiving and working and researching on large collections. So for me, I mean, just a list of 10 artists or 20 or 30 or 40 doesn't make any sense. I mean, it doesn't work. Doesn't work for me. I have to figure out the field in totality. Like for instance, one work, I'll give you an example, a work co-curated an exhibition called Zones of Contact with two co-curators, Vidya Shivdas and Diksha Nath. And in that, there was one project that I contributed, which was my project, called Grazing. And in Grazing, I tried to bring in the entire, it sounds funny now also, even then it was funny. But I tried to bring the entire art scene of Bangalore to Delhi, like in that little space. Tried to, and I'm interested in the challenges of these propositions, and I did do it. It did happen. Brought in the entire Bangalore scene. How? That's the method. So I'm interested in those methods, in devising those methods, and that's the curatorial. That's my curatorial practice. So I mean, how do I decide which stories to retell or tell? Yeah, I'm very methodical. I'm interested in devising methodologies of telling and retelling also. So yeah, and I've kind of written about it as well. So would love to share those essays.
Akansha, questions are pouring in, so I will have to go quickly to make sure that we are answering or attempting to answer at least most of them. So I'm going to fuse two questions. One was asking before, I still didn't in the chat about expression and art, and what do you think about art as a form of expression, or I would even phrase it, does art still function as an expression nowadays? Yes, no, how does it work when, art is becoming so conceptual? And I'm fusing this with another question about abstract art and a contemporary take on abstract art. And Arjun, another student from our program, is asking about your perspective about it as a curator. There is also a request for you to give us the name of the essay of Benjamin that you mentioned. And this is from my colleague Pallavi, that I will ask her to articulate another question separately. And I have a few more. So let's start with this.
Yeah. So how we express art, or how? Yeah, of course, art is a medium of expression, and I think more so now with the pandemic, the kind of hesitations we have overcome. We have, I mean, of course, there's a lot within us, but I would say at least in some ways, certain walls have fallen, and they must remain so. Like in terms of hierarchies of expression that are very that certain institutions of certain kind or balances of certain kind tend to produce. Want consciously or unconsciously. So of course that happens in the process. But our job as makers, and thinkers, is of course to argue with those continuously, so I would say in terms of the diversification of expressions, the way it has happened in the last couple of years is unforeseen, is amazing, is absolutely amazing. So yeah, for me, all forms of art are on an equal level. We've curated exhibitions on smell, we have curated exhibitions on zines, we have curated exhibitions on ethers, on different. So we're interested in the aspect of making, So the verb is important, the act is important, the creation of the space is important, the space that you create through the conversation. The essay that I was referring to, you'll find it easily on internet. It's Walter Benjamin's The Storyteller. It's beautiful. beautifully written. So the storyteller, yeah, just that.
Great. We will try also to share it on the chat. You spoke about pluralism, how art, expression of art are diverse, abstract art, conceptual art, installation, performance, etc. Anything can come in. So there is an interesting question in this connotation. In fact, two. I will start with one because both of them are slightly complex. So how do art curator deals with work that are rather deviant in the society? For example, art that contradicts the arbitrary conventions of religion that are followed by the religious. Furthermore, works of art that have high potential but may shade gods or idol in a manner of lower virtue or something that is lamentable. In short, critique of religion through art. Provocative at times. What do curator do about this? The people who are supposed to mediate it with the public space.
I'm not sure if I've understood the question correctly, but I'll try and answer it with the way I have understood it. You're talking about censorship or self-censorship. And also mediation of it via the figure of the curator and reaching and its dissemination and reaching it to
especially when it hurts other religious feelings or something which is controversial.
Intended to different publics. So of course, there have been. Religion is one thing, and I'll digress a little and to include in this large category of censorship and self-censorship and which is something all of us are also negotiating and navigating every day, I think in our own ways. I'll just expand that to give one example. Like at the museum, we have often, of course, a lot of artists make nudes. And Sousa, for instance, lots of works are portraits of nude women that he has, and in our collection we have many remarkable works of his like that. And of course, there have been times when certain groups or not groups exactly, but like for instance, a school would not want their young students to see a certain section. So to cordoning off a certain section to allow a free passage in another way is how we have navigated changing the direction a bit to avoid the encounter. And wherever it's possible, we do engage. Wherever there's a room for a conversation to happen, we are interested in engaging. But in a work which is made with a certain intention of, most times it so happens that the artist is not aware that it's going to hurt someone. It's not obviously it's not done with that intention. If it's made with that intention, obviously, then that's another question altogether. If it's made with the intention of provoking and asking for a discussion on that requires a completely different approach. But most such things happen without that sort of an intention, and they happen as an effect of putting certain ideas in public. And there, I think the role of the curator is to manage that space of conversation, to provide, to allow all expressions to be heard and not unheard. So I've written an essay, and actually I was working on an essay around the idea of sleeping exhibitions, exhibition that are under sleep, are in sleep, or are going on in different forms and ways, because they have been dismantled or vandalized or broken apart in ways not intended by the makers. So those disbanded exhibitions actually are still going on, like those are conversations that can be picked up by us. So I would say I feel that story is not ending there. It's not, it doesn't end with that intervention. And in fact, the intervention of the vandalist, that figure of the vandalist or figure of the one who's asking another kind of a question, is very interesting. Like is also adding a dimension and provocative, equally provocative. So yeah.
The next one is quite similar, but takes it into in a different direction. I would put it like this. So it goes like this: in this current space and time, when common sense dictates action, both in the personal and the public realm, there is a common sense according to which we all act, and might also be at times problematic. Do you think the museum is a space that stimulates intellectual debate or popularize this common sense? If yes, either option, what do you think, how it does? So does it question, does it undermine the common sense, or does it actually help the common sense to establish itself?
I think it's both. It's both. It's both. It's a space for intellectual debate, and also for the popular and for the commonsensical things to be manifested and talked out in public area. So it's not a space. It's not just a space for artists or creative practitioners or intellectuals to present their views. Like, it's a space for public. It's a space for anybody who's interested in spending time in it, with it, around it. And I think as a public space, the responsibility and the response to it lies with all. So as curators, we could be initiators of certain things, but that sharing and that carrying on further is an equal responsibility. But it's difficult to do. Saying it verbally is fine. Like, I'm saying this and I believe in it also. But just achieving this. I mean, myself. I mean, all of us at the museum have been trying to do this, but it's hard. It's extremely hard. And to have this equality distributed and absorbed also, because people come to your, I mean, thinking that it's your space, and it's you're responsible for everything, and but so to that for that co-ownership and authorship, and for that space to emerge, it takes hell amount of work and continuous work. And so you can't leave it. You can't leave it. So I mean, one is dedicatedly working towards it. But yeah, so it's work.
I think it's a fascinating answer. I will speak now from a perspective of an artist. We are expecting the museum to be a space for whatever innovation and whatever criticism and whatever philosophical or artistic propositions that we will put forward. And I think what you're saying about the museum as a space of dialogue, negotiation, makes it far more complex and interesting. And also, in a sense, for us as artists, it brings again it enables us to bring the spirit of the avant-garde to the museum again, because it's not as if whatever you say is just going to be accepted. There is it maintains this tension between what we think and what is common sense. So I really enjoy this answer. Really, very, very interesting. We have 2 more minutes, but I will request my colleague, Pallavi Narayan, who is a writer, editor, scholar, literary scholar, but also work with museum. And I think she's the best to comment and say something or to ask about museum and storytelling. We should have started with Pallavi, but we got such an interesting question from the audience and from the students. So Pallavi, I apologize.
No worries, Akya. Thank you so much. This was a very rich and very nuanced presentation, and I would like to connect with you separately because I'm also writing on museum. So yeah, Akya, also thank you very much for this very generous introduction for which there was no need. But anyway, Yeah, so I had a number of questions. I mean, I have actually, pages and pages of notes from this talk today. But the primary one that I wanted to ask was, how does KNMA provide a commentary on consumerist culture situated as it is inside a mall? So, I mean, I would really like you to talk about the space outside the museum and how that, shapes or reshapes the artifacts inside it. So that's one. And then also if you could connect it with the idea of the museum as a workshop. So, kind of like seeing it in a different sense as a performative space, not just, a space of the installation art, but also, as a space where, one is actively creating objects which will be exhibited in it. Yeah, so I'll just start with that and maybe just ask you a couple more questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Pallavi, for your question and giving me a chance to talk about the museum in a mall, which is what we what we came to be known for, and for the longest time it was difficult. For the longest time, it was, for people to accept and to take us seriously as an institutional space because of our location in a mall. But from the beginning, like the team at the museum for Mrs. Nader, for Veena, for everyone around, we have been delighted because of being present in the mall. It was a very simple logic of if public cannot come to the museum, we will take the museum to the public and wherever the public is. So it started, and wherever the space is, where do you open a museum? Where's the real estate? Where is the simple practical questions. You don't have a space, you want to start a museum, and something I addressed in a bit poetic way in the beginning of my lecture today. So it started on a very, very simple and completely non-intellectual way, and I think personally I think that's absolutely stunning, and I still think it's absolutely, 10 years on, 11 years on, I still absolutely think it was a great decision to not wait for a building to come up, for not wait for a space to be made, but figure it out on the way. And that model has really worked for us so far. And so being in the mall did not give us ready-made public, because the mall in which we are is still one of the 7 malls in this Saket district court and one of the uninhabited malls. But it gave us the space and huge space of the mall to engage with. So we have also had artists doing performances and stuff in the early years of the museum and the rest of the mall as well. So we had Nikhil Chopra and others. So we've moved around and we've done lots of fun things in our past, and I'm trying to figure out who we are also. So this is linked to our being. So with the consumer culture, I don't see anything offensive or bad or anything at all in terms of, being we're a shop, and a shop that doesn't, that can sell, that doesn't sell, that sell ideas, that is interested in, that is inviting people to have conversation, to be, inviting time. We're interested in people's time. So second question about performative space. Yeah, absolutely. That was one way to open up the idea of the museum and become that inviting space. Because being in a mall, of course, there is a certain kind of an audience that comes to the mall also. It's only people who either want to buy or belong to a certain class. So there is, of course, there are huge limitations just within that section. So but the museum is not only for them, So we have over the years with our teams, we have developed a number and range of programs and outreach events that we do with different organizations with collaboration. So that's sort of a reaching out and creating those pockets within the city, and that expanse has been a journey in itself. And yeah, so embodying and becoming a performative space was part of a plan of exploring.
Thank you so much, Akansha. We have to stop here. We started right on time and we are slightly late. I'm getting many more questions on, you can't see it on the chat because it's on my WhatsApp, but we will have to stop here. I apologize for everyone that we could not entertain, but I'm sure Akansha will be very happy to interact with you separately. You can send email and all, and if Akansha will allow me, I will share the contact details. Thank you so much, Akansha. It was so interesting, enlightening to see your perspective. I like the ideas that we ended with speaking about the location of the museum in the mall. And I know that there is lots of debates about it, but I think it's interesting that this is where the museum is located. Since the last century, we speak about breaking the walls of the museum, making it more interactive, more approachable. I think this is one way of doing this, placing it in one of the most popular cultural institutes that we have today, which is the mall. So as long as we have malls, I think we should have museums within them. Thank you very much, Akansha. Again, thank you everyone for participating in this fascinating walkthrough and discussion. I hope to see you very, very soon in our next event.
Thank you so much, Akya. Thank you, everyone. It was a delight. Thank you.
Thank you.